So nice to see some new faces here. I have been a life coach and a mentor for international women since 2012. Like many of you, I've lived in a lot of different places. So my coaching has at times been on pause and at times been active. And we've repatriated to Chicago in 2017. And during the pandemic, I decided it was time to more formally relaunch my business. I was sitting on the floor, merging and purging everything from like all the different houses that we had. And I was like, what am I waiting for? So it's been like an amazing experience connecting and staying connected with international women all over the world. And I also created International Women in Chicago because I like to live an international lifestyle no matter where I am, and having all these different women who have traveled around the world, all women in or from Chicago are welcome, but a lot of the women have lived abroad or they're living abroad currently in Chicago, and we do a lot of different activities. So if anyone's listening to this and you're a woman from Chicago or living in Chicago right now, like please join us on Facebook. So a little bit more about my history. So most of my clients come to me because they are living abroad or they've moved back from being abroad. And the two topics that we deal with most commonly are purpose, figuring out what to do in this new environment with your time, be it a job or some other passion. Really, the root issue that a lot are facing is that they're lonely and they're trying to figure out how to make friends. So that's one of the reasons that I was happy when Tina mentioned that she wanted me to talk about this topic, because community and friends have always been important to me. And I've always been a planner and an organizer in my friendship groups. And the little secret is I'm actually a bit of an introvert. But the way I've overcome that is that I add value to my friends. And I say this in retrospect, but I add value by planning events and organizing things. And that's been something that I've really leaned on as I've moved around. So I studied abroad in the Netherlands and France and Norway. And then as a family, we've lived in Tokyo twice, Abu Dhabi, and London. So I've also lived all over the US. Like I grew up moving around. And then as an adult, I moved around quite a bit. So I've always had to make new friends. And so I don't claim to be an expert, but I definitely have a lot of experience. Yeah, with that, one thing that I did want to say is, as a disclaimer, I am a certified life coach, but I am not a therapist. So like everything that I'm saying today, because we will talk about some topics that are more therapy related, it's all just informational and it's not meant to replace or prevent you from seeing a therapist if you think you need one. So just wanted to throw that out. So what do you think, Tina? I think with the number that we have, we could do
We can do what? What just
do
kind of
have everybody introduce themselves.
Yeah, I think it's a great size. So if your ladies are up to, I would love that. I would love to learn a little bit about you as well, especially on this topic. So let's go ahead.
So I'll go first. I'm Linda. My home is outside of Philadelphia, and I'm currently in Chicago, both in the United States. And then we're also asking you to give a surprising fact. So it doesn't have to be anything whiz bang, but it's like, what is something that people hear about you and they're kind of surprised by it? So mine is that I'm obsessed with crocheting and knitting. And the reason I'm sharing that is because I've actually turned it into a social activity. So I've made some friends through it. So that's my surprising fact. For some reason, people are surprised when they hear that about me. How about you, Tina? Do you want to go?
Yeah. So again, thank you so much for all of you that you've joined us today. Some of you might know me already. Some of you might not know me already, but my name is Tina. I'm living in Buenos Aires at the moment. I'm here because of love. My husband is Argentinian. I am German. You might hear it from my accent. I sometimes don't even realize anymore. So and currently again, living in Buenos Aires. A fun fact or surprising fact, that very much aligns with Linda actually, is that people think that I'm an extrovert, because here in Buenos Aires, especially, I've organized some events. I've made some friends because I realized, okay, if I want to build my network, I have to get out there. But actually, I'm not an extrovert at all. I'm an introvert. And doing things like this, getting out there, meeting new people, like every time, I get this sweaty palms and I get super nervous. And it's just like definitely something or a position I find myself at, leaving my comfort zone 100,000%.
But I'll move on to the agenda just to give you an overview of what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about some challenges, about why it's so difficult to make friends as an adult, really for two reasons. One, I want you to realize like you're not alone. This is actually a thing. Number two, we're going to look at it from the perspective of what can we do about these challenges. Also, why friendships are important. A lot of what I'm sharing with you today is based off of research, off of science. And so it's not just the world according to Linda, which I think is very valuable. And, what is friendship? Because it's easier to find things when we're very clear on what it is that we're looking for. So that's the reason that we're going to actually talk about that. And a lot of these things that I'm going to present may seem a little bit basic, but stick with me because the information that I'm sharing is going to help you fill out your worksheet. And then you're going to do some exercises after the workshop. And then hopefully that'll give you some ideas of things that you can do on your own to either build or strengthen your friendship circle, depending on where you are with it right now. We'll spend hopefully a good amount of time on the how and where to make friends. So have your worksheet or a piece of paper out so that you can take notes. And then making friends from the inside out, it's actually the crux of my own personal strategy on making friends and probably the most important part as far as I'm concerned. And then we're also, I skipped the bonus. The bonus is nurturing friends from afar, because while we're mostly talking today about making friends in our local communities, there is a lot of value in keeping touch with people who are far away, and it's not always easy. So we'll talk about some tips on that right now. Oh, and then also, Tina said that she's going to be editing you out, but also we'll not record the Q&A at the end, I believe. So the bottom line is it's all going to be very private. And I want you to think for a few minutes about why you signed up for this workshop. We're not going to share it, but I just really want you to think about why you're here and what you're hoping to get out of it, because we want this to be interactive. And if we're talking about something that you want us to go more deep on or something that raises questions for you, feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself and jump in, or you can even use the chat function because Tina will be watching that and help me make sure that I don't miss that. And then I also encourage you, there's a lot of information out there on friendship now. And so I've tried to boil it down and make it simple, but I want you to think about your current situation. I mean, I heard a lot of different countries named, and I'm not an expert on all of the different nuances. So I want you to be listening through from your own perspective and how the information that's being shared can be applied in your local environment, and the situation that you're in as well. So before we get started, does anybody have any questions or comments about? If not, we'll move right on to why friends as an adult can be difficult. And, we need to embrace that. I think sometimes when we're struggling to make friends, we think there's something wrong with us. And this is a thing. I think when the pandemic hit, there was a lot of information out there on how loneliness has become an epidemic. And also, a lot of people after the pandemic kind of forgot how to make friends or how to be with other people. And so I think we just have to look at all the books and the podcasts and everything that's out there now about the topic to realize that we're not alone. This is actually a thing. And speaking of all these different books and podcasts, Tina's going to email you my resource list. And I've kind of curated a list of podcasts and some books and articles that I think are actually really helpful and that I listen to myself. And so I'm hoping that you can, carry on your journey of learning about how to make friends and whatnot by listening to some of those. So anyway, so it's difficult. We know that. But then you add an international relocation on top of that, where you've got communication issues. You don't necessarily completely understand the nuances of the local environment. And it's like, can feel really impossible at times. And I think we should acknowledge that because I repatriated 8 years ago, and a lot of times in my life, I would blame things in my life that I wasn't happy with on the fact that I was living abroad. Like, oh, it's harder for me because I'm living abroad. And now that I'm back, I do realize, like, I now take it for granted that I'm in my own culture and environment. So I think, there's a lot of valuable, or what is the right word for it? Like, I mean, it is harder when you're living abroad. And at the same time, when you're living abroad, there's people that are not living abroad, so they don't really understand. Or you're interacting with people that don't live abroad, so they don't necessarily understand what you're going through. So all that, I'm just sort of saying we know how hard it can be. A relocation is one of the top 5 most stressful things that happens in life. And I don't know about you, but there's times when I've relocated and I've relocated repeatedly, and I felt like all I was doing was cycling through the top stressors in life. Like what are they? They're like an illness, that you're facing or a loved one's facing, divorce or separation. Okay, I haven't gone through that one, so don't want to start any rumors, but that wasn't one of mine. Death of a loved one. I know there's other ones that I'm forgetting. But anyway, relocation alone, even switching house is one of the top 5 stressors, and then doing it on an international level is even more difficult because of the culture, the language, the lifestyle change. There's a lot of grieving sometimes and guilt that goes along with an international relocation, and all of these can lead to anxiety. And when we're suffering from anxiety, our brain is trying to protect us. So if we think that it's hard to make friends, basically when we're out in the environment, our brain is looking for ways to prove that we're right. So I think there's something to be said for, shifting your mindset. You can shift your reality. So that's one of the first comments I'm making, where I'm really just planting seeds and trying to draw awareness to things that may be hindering us from making friends. So ask yourself, what is my attitude? What is my mindset about making friends? Let's see. I want to make sure I don't forget everything. Oh, yeah. And there's also a lot of shame around not having friends, or feeling like, you look at social media and it looks like everyone's having fun and you're the only one that doesn't know anyone. I highly recommend a book, The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. It's really helpful when it comes to shame. And it's one of the reasons that, I said, like, we need to embrace that this is hard. The book that she wrote will help you kind of deal with shame in general. But one of the tips that she gives is like, let's normalize this. Let's talk about it. Let's help each other. Like, there should be no reason that we don't say to someone that we know, like, you know what, I'm looking to make more friends. I like to play tennis. Do you know anyone that plays tennis? It's like we have to put out kind of the vibe, so to speak, so that people know what we need. Because if we're always walking around with a brave face, then people won't know how they can help us. Okay, so now to the facts that I have on here with the top challenges. Actually, I want to do a little something first. It's on your worksheet. The first question is, how do you feel about friendship? When you think about making friends, like, just jot down a quick word that comes to your mind about, is it scary? Is it exciting? Is it fun? Just write it down. And then I can't see your faces, so you've got a lot of privacy. If you're comfortable doing this, close your eyes and put your hand over your heart and say to yourself, there's nothing wrong with me. Struggling to make friends as an adult is common, and I will find my way. So just sit with that for a minute and let it sink in. Now, I want you to think about, how do you want to feel about making friends? Or when you think about your friendship circle, what's the word that you want to come in mind? And write that down. And what I just said, there's nothing wrong with me. Struggling to make friends as an adult is common, and I will find my way. You can say that anytime you're feeling anxious. Like, you can say it if you get social anxiety like I do. I mean, I organize events all the time and I still get social anxiety. I mean, I don't necessarily say all 3 of those things to myself every time, but I will maybe sometimes say 1 or 2 of them. I mean, I just think that just taking a minute to take a breath can really ground us and take a lot of this anxiety away. I mean, if you walk into an opportunity to meet other people thinking that it's going to be awful, then chances are you're going to look for ways to prove yourself right. So now I'm going to actually move into the facts. And the one thing that I want to keep in mind is that some of these things may not apply to you, but what came to me when I was researching this is that even if these things aren't applying to me, they may apply to the people that I'm trying to make friends with. And so that's just as bad as if they apply to me, right? Because sometimes, there's the whole thing about, I was listening to something the other day where somebody, it was Mel Robbins. I'm a big Mel Robbins junkie. She was talking to somebody about how we're all walking around stressed and overwhelmed. And we sometimes use those words interchangeably, but the difference between them is when we're stressed, that can be because of good things or bad things in our lives. For example, if you're getting married, it can be stressful, right? Planning a wedding. If you're having a baby, it's a beautiful thing, but it can be stressful because it's a big life change. The difference is between stress and overwhelm is that overwhelm is when the number of things that you're stressed about are out of your control. And the tip that was given was to pick one thing to focus on to add to your life that you can control. And it just seems counterintuitive. When I heard it, I was like, what do you mean? I'm like overwhelmed and you're telling me to add something to my life? But what I think is really interesting is that, when I think about being able to control something, it's like it does kind of ground me and make me feel at peace. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm going to throw out to all of you, if you're feeling overwhelmed with life and you're thinking, oh, great, now I got to try to make friends on top of it, have that be the one thing that you can control. And so a lot of what we're going to talk about are things that can help you control the people that are in your life and how to increase or deepen the relationships that you have. So the first one here is like lack of built-in social structures. I think this is a common one that all of us can understand, right? Like when you're a kid, you're on the playground, you're with people every day, you make friends. As adults, we don't have that, but what can we do to counterbalance it? Being international, as most of you are, like you can connect with other international groups because a lot of them meet regularly or have opportunities to connect regularly. And a lot of the people in those groups are sure things because they're looking to make other friends. So that's my counterbalance on that one. And I'm going to share my counterbalances, but I also will pause at the end of each of the 4 categories so that you have a chance if you want to share anything that comes to mind for you. And then the other part of this is sort of the scattered social networks, because as we get older, we might go to work and the people at work won't be our same age as they were when we were younger and we were in high school or college or our first job maybe. And so everyone's at different stages of life, and you may be really close to someone at work, but you don't have really anything in common with them outside of it. So the counterbalance that came to mind for me on that is like having a curiosity mindset, because while you may not have something in common with the person who sits next to you at work, maybe they know somebody that they could introduce you to or have some information that they can share with you. So look at everyone as an opportunity, and asking for help can be a way to connect with people. And I also am a big proponent of having friends of different ages and different life stages. My whole life, I always had friends who were older than me. And then all of a sudden I looked in the mirror and I realized like, I'm actually the older friend now. I'm like, not sure how that happened, but it did. Even if on the surface you see people that are out there that are not your same age and it doesn't seem like you'll have anything in common, by having a curiosity mindset, you may uncover something that could be the basis for a friendship despite your age or life stage difference. So does anybody have anything around lack of built-in social structure or tip or anything that they want to share? If not, I can keep moving. This is the kind of the sciencey part of the chat. So then the next one is the time and energy constraints. And it's kind of obvious in that, we have a little baby here. It's like as we get older, we have more responsibilities with work and family and whatever else may be our responsibilities. So it just leaves less time to socialize than we had as a kid. And, again, I'm going to bring up as the counterbalance being international because, sometimes when we first move, we can't work or we're not sure what we want to do and we have extra time on our hands, and, making friends and setting up our life is a great way. I mean, I've always thought of those periods for myself as like responsibility holidays. And I'm like, well, why not focus on making friends during that period and just see what you can accomplish while you're trying to set yourself up. And then also kids are a great way to meet other people. So if you happen to relocate and you have kids, like definitely, I'll say when you have kids, you can use that as a way. I'm big on, as a life coach, stacking. And it's sort of like, well, if I have to go to the school anyway, even if the other moms are busy, maybe I'll have an opportunity at a play date or a birthday party to get to know them better, even though they're really busy in general in their life. So we have to always be looking for opportunities to kind of break through these challenges. And then the third one, increased selectivity, is a big one. And I don't think this impacts as many people as maybe the first 2, but most people as they get older really become more selective, like really like they get more clear on who they are and who they want to hang out with. And I actually was having lunch with 2 of my friends from my time in London who happened to live in the Chicago suburbs. And as I was talking about working on this workshop, she's like, oh, I think the biggest problem is I'm more selective now. I don't like anyone. And I was kind of laughed because she does actually like people and she's made friends since she moved here. But I mean, it's true. We do kind of get more picky. And so I think with that one, being authentic when you're out in public and is really a way to break through that. If the people you're trying to meet and or you yourself are more selective, it's like being authentic is going to bring the right people into your life. So I'm kind of moving through these quickly, but does anybody have anything they want to say about like time and energy constraints or increased selectivity? Well, and then the last one, and we talked about this a little bit, the psychological and emotional factors. It's like the fear of rejection and the fear of vulnerability. Like we all have memories of when I was at this party one time and went to introduce myself to a group, they turned their back on me, or like whatever it was. But, again, confirmation bias comes into play here. It's like we have to have a mindset that it's all an experiment. And, what's the worst thing that can happen if we put ourselves out there? It just takes a lot of bravery. And that's sort of a theme throughout this entire talk, is that we need to be brave because we're the only ones that we can't wait for friends to fall out of the sky. Sometimes we get lucky and we do fall into a friend group, but for the most part, it takes a bit of work, especially, I like to look at friends sort of in a pyramid, and on another slide or two, we're going to look at this, but we might know a lot of people, but maybe we're lacking those deeper relationships. The other thing is the insecurity and loneliness that we talked about. It makes it harder to be proactive in social situations. And I think that did I mention Brene Brown already? Now I'm forgetting like what I said and what I was like practicing earlier, but she is an authority on shame. She's done a lot of research around it, and her book, something of imperfections, it's on the resource list. You can find it. She's actually written 3 books about shame. I've not read the first 2, but I now want to, now that I know about them.
The Gift of Imperfection, that's the one you've mentioned very much in the beginning, right? That one. Okay, I've noted it down.
So that
as
one's
well.
and I think the counterbalance to this one is starting with other people who are new and doing what you enjoy. Like a lot of the counterbalances are the same for all these challenges. It's like if we're out there and we're being authentic, then it can give us the confidence to really we're doing these things for ourselves, and then they happen to include other people. I also, on that resource sheet, gave you a link to a podcast that I've been obsessed with lately. It's called Dear Nina, Conversations About Adult Friendship. And there's an episode that I linked to specifically with a woman who talks about confidence and about how it's like a muscle, and we can exercise, we can be brave and we can exercise, because the reality is that confidence doesn't exist without there being like insecurity underneath. So you have to have something to be brave about, which is, I'm going to build my confidence. And then the last one under psychological and emotional factors is fixed routines. As we get older, we get set in our ways and set in our social circle. And I think it can be hard to incorporate new people. So I think we're going to talk a little bit about ways to find people that you could potentially befriend. And I think one of the and about, just by the location and or your interests. And so I think being intentional with that will put you with people that you have shared interests that could help you potentially break through that. And then, again, with most of us here being international in some way, shape, or form, we have these cultural issues. We have the local context that we're trying to operate within. And so, again, focusing on things you can and can't control, like you're not going to change the local structure, but really building a deep understanding of it is one way to figure out how you can navigate it. So I encourage you, if you haven't done this already, to start thinking about who can help you understand the local context, or who can be your kind of safe person to go to. Or if you spend a lot of time with this person, like say to them, please let me know if I do something that's not appropriate. We've got some cultures are more closed off in the beginning, but once you break in, then you're in for life. Other cultures, people seem very friendly, but it takes a lot to get to that next level. And, I've experienced that myself. When I was in Tokyo, I was working with a woman that we really hit it off. We had a lot in common. We spent a lot of time laughing in the office and really having a good time working together. And I put it out there a few times for her to join me to do things. And she basically said to me, I can't be seen with you because I already am considered an outsider because I've lived abroad and I'm fluent in English. And if I'm seen socializing with foreigners, it's going to make it harder for me. And it broke my heart, but I really appreciated the transparency, because I think that's another thing that we're all like behind whatever it may be, and we're not being honest with each other. And like that can just make finding friends and deepening relationships so much more difficult. Now, she did come over to my house when I had my baby, which I appreciated. I didn't tell anybody, but she did come over.
There's just one thing I would like to add here. Sorry for interrupting, Linda, but I think it aligns pretty good to what you've just shared, to the ones who moved abroad for love. What I've learned as well is that building a network, having friends you can rely on, also means that you surround yourself with people who get what you're going through oftentimes, especially if you click with, in our case, women in similar situations without explaining a lot. And I've come to the realization over the years that my partner does not always have to understand what I'm going through, first of all. And also, I mean, I'm relying so much on my partner here in Argentina for my doctor's appointments and all of this. And what you've just shared, Linda, is actually so true because I don't necessarily have to. So I can also ask my friends, like, I know your Spanish is perfect. Can you go to the doctor's appointment with me? And like really going out there, asking for help as well. And this is why really having a good network, making good friends, starting somewhere is so important. And I wish, knowing what I know nowadays, I would have known the first time I moved abroad, back then in Miami. And to those who are listening to the podcast and who are following me on Instagram, they know how much I struggled. And I struggled mostly because I had a really hard time to make friends. And it's still not easy. I'm just quite transparent. As I've mentioned at the beginning, I'm still super nervous getting out there, leaving my comfort zone again and again and again and again. But now I get to come to a point where I'm just like, yeah, I have my network. I can rely on those ladies. I have solid friendships. Obviously, it's going to take a while, and I'm sure we're going to dive deeper into this throughout the workshop. But again, it's just so important to surround yourself with friends that are also supporting you, you know, and that also get what you're going through without explaining a lot, because sometimes that's just the part that's so energy draining. And if you have one person sitting in front of you who's just like, no words needed, I get it. I get what you're going through. I get how you feel. Let's make that work somehow. You know, you feel less alone as well. And that's an incredible feeling.
Right. And that's the whole purpose for like highlighting these challenges. First of all, there's challenges out there, but there are ways to overcome them. And just wanting everyone to realize like we're not alone. And I love hearing you say that people just get it, because that's one of the things that warms my heart with IWC is like whenever we have gatherings, people will commonly say to me after them, like, oh, it was so nice just to be able to talk and not have to explain and whatnot. So it's all very heartwarming. So on your worksheet, I want you just to note if anything popped up for you that you're like, oh, right, I'm facing this, but here's something I can do about it. Just jot that down so that you have it for later. And if anybody has other challenges that they're facing that don't fit into these categories that they want to share or other counterbalances, feel free to speak up. We'd love to hear what's going on with you. Okay, well, like, let's turn this around a little bit and be positive. Like, there's so much information under the benefits of friendship, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I want to highlight some of it because really what I want you to do after we finish this slide is like write down on your worksheet your why. You know, like, why are you willing or interested, at least, in to invest your time and energy in making healthy friendships, because that's something like as we start to talk about the definition of friendship and what friendship means and we want to be talking about healthy friendships. You know, we've all had frenemies, right? If you haven't had one, you're so lucky, but you know, they say people will always remember, they might not remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And I think that is so true and something to keep in mind all the time. So what we're really looking for in our life is healthy friendships. And, you know, there's different levels of friendship, which we're going to talk about next. But one thing that the research here on the benefits of friendship, and especially this came out during the pandemic, is that all levels of friendship are important to us. So I think our minds, when we say friend, tend to go to close friends or best friends, but most people are lucky if they even have a handful of those people. What the research found was like one of the biggest issues during the pandemic was that people weren't going out for coffees and making small talk with the barista or the person standing in line. And like that really fed a lot of people's loneliness and depression. So let's turn that around and think about the benefits. So we've got the mental and emotional boost. You know, it's the studies have shown that friendship reduces stress, loneliness, boosts your self-esteem, which is one reason that I added the bonus in here about keeping in touch with old friends while you're trying to make new ones, increases your happiness and also your sense of belonging. And in a lot of my coaching, I talk a lot about like the difference between fitting in and belonging, because when we fit in, often we're adjusting who we really are to fit in, like to be a member of a group. And belonging is when a group accepts us as our authentic selves, like who we are with like all of our pros and cons, so to speak. So I think that's also really important to keep in mind when we're thinking about who we want to be friends with, is like, who can we be? What group can we belong to? Or what person makes me feel like I can be my authentic self? So then number two is personal growth and development. We can learn a lot about ourselves from our friends. They might bring a new activity in. They might suggest something that we're kind of afraid to do, but then we do it and we're like, oh, it's a chance to be brave. We also learn about how to communicate and how to negotiate and all of these things that maybe we didn't learn from our birth families in a healthy way. And so through our friends, by surrounding ourselves with healthy relationships, we can actually become better people. Then you've got the physical health benefits. I mean, there's studies out there that show that having a solid healthy friendship group can have the same benefits on your body as maintaining a healthy eating and exercise regimen. So I thought that was super interesting. Oh, and also friendships, if you're going through a bad period and you spend some time talking to a friend, like studies have been shown that it can actually lower your blood pressure, which I thought was super interesting. And as I do tend to talk with my hands, you might notice I'm wearing an Aura ring. And I do find it really interesting when the ring tells me when I'm stressed and when I'm relaxed. And a lot of times the relaxed correlate to me chilling out with a friend. So I love that I now have data that proves what's going on. And then the last one is companionship and support. And I think that's pretty practical, right? We all know what it's like when we're going through a bad time and we have a friend that we consider a lifeline that we can reach out to and just be open about what's going on and get their support, even if it's just all we need is someone to listen. So I don't know, what other benefits, does anybody have any other benefits of friendship that they've experienced that they want to throw out to the group? I mean, I think these categories kind of cover a lot of them, but I think I want you to take a minute, and you're still welcome to unmute and jump in, but which of these benefits or even the sub benefits that I mentioned are most motivating to you? Like, what do you think you need more of in your life? Or where do you think you yourself could, benefit from beefing up one of these four major categories in your life? And so on your worksheet also, I want you to take a minute, if anything jumps to mind as I talk about this, to write it down. But then even afterwards, when you're going and doing the exercises that are going to come after the presentation, like think about your why. Why are you willing to invest time and energy into strengthening your friendship circle? So like now's the time. It's like all the information that we just discussed, all the notes that you've taken so far in the prompts that I've given you throughout the workshop. That's the information that you'll use to really think about why. What is it that you need in your life or that you would like to have in your life based off of friendship? I think that's really important. And, a lot of expectations management is such a powerful tool. It's like, what do we expect of ourselves, our partner, our friends? Because we have to make sure there's always some form of, I don't like to say balance because that seems 50-50, but some harmony in terms of what we're expecting, even of ourselves. So it's like, how hard can, especially when we're having a bad day, it's like to just download or to beat ourselves up. It like doesn't help anything. Okay. Now here's where we're kind of getting into the crux of what we're looking for. So what is a friend? I just thought this quote from Eleanor Roosevelt was so beautiful because it's true. It's like many people will walk in and out of your life, but only the true friends will leave footprints on your heart. Because I think when we live an international life, there's some people that we only know for a short time, but as an adult, you get to know them really deeply, really fast, and then they're gone. But it doesn't mean the friendship wasn't valuable. Like it stays with you in some way. And thankfully, with technology as it is these days, we can actually still keep in touch, even with videos and whatnot. So that's great. So when it comes to like the definition of friend and the 5 C's of friendship, there's so many different models out there. So I tried to pick some real basic ones that we can just build off of. So Lydia Denworth is a friendship researcher and she's written some books. And she basically says a friendship is stable and long lasting. Now, I think as international people, the long standing is like maybe something we could debate, but I think stable is a powerful word. Positive, we talked about frenemy a little bit, like a positive relationship, and then cooperative. So it's helpful You're both, it's mutual, or you're there for each other. If it's one-sided, it's probably not a friendship. When it comes down to the 5 C's, there's so many out there. There's actually more than 5. Like there's tons of them. And they're mentioned in the Bible. Dale Carnegie, the guru of personal development, talks about them. These are the ones that I thought were most helpful. The resource that I gave you in the resource guide is actually about the 5 C's of romantic relationships. So you can look at that if you'd like, but I kind of pulled from that for this. Communication is the foundation of any relationship. And what I want to say before I go through these is the reason I'm throwing these out is like, as you're meeting people, you can very easily use these as sort of an evaluation of like, as you're thinking about who of your acquaintances you want to try to get deeper with, like you can think about like, how well do we communicate? How compatible are we? That sort of thing. The compatibility, that is really important, if you're going to deepen the relationship. Like, how well do you get along? Do you have similar values? Like for acquaintances, these things don't really matter as much, but as you get to be closer, they become more important. Are you able to compromise? Do you share how much you care about the person, but do you also share kind of the duties? Is it reciprocal in terms of, helping each other out with things? Like if one person is always asking the other person for favors, it's not really that equal in most cases. And then the commitment, because, the foundation of a friendship, like the closer you get, like it's a commitment, like it is in a romantic relationship. And it's sort of like, those are the reasons that you forgive each other when there's a misunderstanding or whatever it may be. I heard someone once say that friendships without conflict are acquaintances. And I thought that was actually really powerful, because the reality is friendship's not always easy, just like relationships are. And so, I don't know, think about the 5 C's, like which one is most important to you in a friend, and just jot that down. Because it's like I said, we can use these to kind of evaluate our current relationships and future relationships. And it's helpful if we know what it is, So the one thing I wanted to say about the communication also is like this morning I was listening to a podcast and there was an author of this book called Talk. And this is not on your resource list because I literally just found out about it this morning. Professor Brooks from Harvard. But she basically says that very good communication is built off of this acronym Talk. So it's topic, ask, light, I think it is. Light meaning like humor. And then K is kindness. And the whole premise of the book is sort of like how to communicate well, but also how to take small talk into more deeper conversation. And so that might be something that you would be interested in looking at if one of the things that you're challenged by is sort of how to deepen the relationship. And then I thought this next, I can't see it on my slide, but I'll look at my notes here. There's a lot of different levels of friendship out there. There's a lot of different ways to slice and dice and define friends. But I thought these 4 levels were actually pretty interesting, especially because there's been research done that showed how long it takes to actually. Can you see? You can't see my slides now, can you?
So we still see the slide you just, what is a friend? The 5 C's, which I'm texting in the chat as well. Julia's asking for them.
Yeah.
So that you can work with that on your worksheet as well.
Oh, sorry. What is she asking for?
Can we post the 5 C's again? I didn't see it on the worksheet.
They're up there on the screen. And you'll get a copy of these slides as well. So it's communication, compatibility, compromise, care, and commitment. And in a romantic relationship, care is actually chemistry. So I thought that was just kind of interesting. So, okay. So the 4 levels are acquaintance, casual friend, and close friend. Now, some people call close friends best friends, whatever it may be. But I thought there's a study by this guy, Jeffrey Hall, done out of Kansas University about how many hours it takes to go from being like an acquaintance to a casual friend. And then from a casual friend to a friend or a good friend. And then from a friend to a close friend, or somewhere after that 200 hours, it's going to be a best friend. That's a lot of time. And especially for busy people to I keep turning this off. I'm not sure why, especially for busy people to invest. And so I don't know about you, but like, I was actually really surprised when I saw that. So, when you're a kid or you're in college, you have all this free time and you can invest in but the ability to to do that as an adult can sometimes be challenging. So that's why we're going to talk about, sorry, my Zoom skills are a little bit off right now and I keep turning off my slides. So that's what so basically here's how it's defined. An acquaintance is somebody that you might see occasionally, but you kind of stick with the small talk and you never make plans together. And then a casual friend is someone that you might chat a little bit below the surface, but you don't, if you make plans together, it's usually around a shared like hobby or passion or something that maybe is bringing you together automatically. And then the close friend is more, there's like the mutual care and affection. You're very authentic. You don't hold back a lot. And you want to reach out to meet up with each other beyond shared activities. It's like you just want to spend time with that person. And then the close friend or the intimate friend or the best friend or whatever you want to call it, most of us are lucky if we have, a handful of those friends. Those are the ones that we usually build over time. And there's not that much that you hold back from sharing with that person. And so again, like I made a comment earlier that I like to look at these as a triangle. So you've got your acquaintances at the bottom. You might know a lot of acquaintances, but then as you go up to your best friends, it's like there's not quite as many of them up there. So one of the things, and is it, maybe I'll give an example, like between acquaintance, like an acquaintance might know your job or like your title, but you probably wouldn't share with that person if you're struggling with your job and that you're thinking about quitting unless they were like at least a casual friend. And then, a close friend is someone that maybe you would actually share, like if you're having relationship problems and that sort of thing. So these are all like very general definitions, but I think they're helpful because a lot of times we just throw around the word friend and it's like, what do we actually mean by that? I've actually started sentences a few times saying like my friend, and then I'm like, well, no, actually my acquaintance, because I feel like if we call everybody our friend, like we're not really giving our true friends the credit that they deserve. So the goal is to, we all meet people and start with small talk, and then we identify the people by thinking about the friendship definition or thinking about the 5 C's and bring them up, through the different levels, as we see is best. And so I think one thing that I would ask you is just on a very high level, what do you think you need to do? Like, do you need to bring more people in your life, or do you just need to deepen or try to deepen some of the relationships that you already have? So I'll give you a minute to think about that, making sure I'm covering all the stuff. Yeah. So that's really the first thing. And then like you can go deeper on that when you get the follow-up exercise, identifying who the people are that you know now and which category you would place them in. And then you can use that to create a plan to actually keep either building or strengthening your relationships.
Very interesting, may I say, to think that way. To kind of focus on specific people. Like at least that would be my example, the case. That you have a strategy on making friends, just again, like as kids, it just comes natural. You just meet at the playground and you just like getting back home and you tell your parents like, hey, I've made a new friend today, which my husband says quite often. So I think it's a cultural definition as well. So like for Argentinians, apparently a friendship is different than it is for Germans, which I find very interesting as well. But really like having a strategy in place to make friends. And it's not that romantic, but also come to the realization, it's necessary as older you get, also to really focus on what you want and what's important to you. And that comes with getting to know yourself better over the years as well. What fits into your situation, into your current life situation, for example. So super interesting topic in general.
Well, and in the exercise that you're going to be sent, there's actually a level where you're kind of talking to your trusted local person to say, like, how do the local friendship expert, fit with these definitions? So maybe you'll have 5 layers. Like you'll have the opportunity to rename the categories and redefine them to fit your culture and your local culture. So I think this is really just meant to be like a real high level first sweep at it. But then the next slide is really where we start to get into how and where. Like, it's probably why you're all here. So I made you listen to me talk for almost an hour before I get to it. Now we're there. And I'm not going to give you a list of, here's an address of a coffee shop where you can go make friends. But what we're going to talk about is what you can do to increase your chances of making friends. And then we're going to talk about some ways to identify places where you are more likely to make friends. So here under the tactics, we've got be approachable and initiate contact. Well, think about it. Like, there's been times when I've been in a bad mood or not wanting to go someplace and I kind of walk in with my head down and I'll looking at my feet or whatever. But if you walk in and you're smiling and you're making eye contact, your chances of connecting with someone else are a lot higher. You also need to be brave and like be approachable, but also approach other people. And that's really important. Like, ask them open-ended questions so that, don't just say, oh, do you come to this cafe all the time? Say, oh, what's your favorite thing about this cafe? Or do you have other cafes in the neighborhood that you like to go to? Something to really spark conversation versus just yes and no. And then another big one, cultivate your interests. Like, use this opportunity for yourself to do things that you enjoy doing in a group setting. I knit with other people. Like, I actually, I'm not really hanging out with them outside of the knitting, but I really enjoy my time with them once a month. And then I've brought friends into it with me. So like, it's an opportunity for me to connect on at least a monthly basis with one friend who comes pretty regularly. So sometimes we'll go do something afterwards or whatever. Like, I've turned something that's very solitary into a social environment. So look for the clubs and organizations and also explore new interests. Make time to, something you can control when you're feeling overwhelmed. Think of something you've always wanted to try and go do it. And you never know who you will meet. Be a curious listener. I think this is a really important one. Like, a lot of times we're listening because we want to figure out like, oh, what can I say next? So I show how funny or how smart I am. But if we really listen to understand the other person, it makes them feel so seen and so valued. So I just think it's really important that we like show genuine interest and like be very curious about other people. And that's one way to really take your small talk to the next level, is by really making the person feel valued. What else? Be genuine and open. I mean, I think, again, like, it's hard to sustain something that you're faking. So really get comfortable with who you are and be that person and be open to trying new things. Again, I'm going to throw out bravery because it takes some bravery to put ourselves out there and be vulnerable with other people. Follow up with generosity. And I'm not saying that you have to take people out to dinner, but if you promise, one way to stay connected with someone is if they mention something and you've got information on it, say like, oh, why don't you give me your contact info? I'll send this to you afterwards. But like, that follow-up piece is what often falls apart. Like, one of the two people don't follow up and then nothing ever happens. And it's so simple, but so important. So I don't know what else, like, what are other ways that we can be generous with people? Like, we can share information. I don't know, my brain is going blank. Let's see. I have anything in my notes, be very specific. That's another way to be generous, is like to throw, like, if you say to somebody, hey, we met at that meeting last week, I'd love to have coffee, throw out some specific times. I think one of the most difficult things about friendship and making plans is actually getting the details on the calendar. So if you're the one that proposes times, it takes it from, hey, we should get together sometime, to let's get together next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If those don't work, you let me know what works for you, and follow up. Be persistent. And then the last one I'm going to throw in there is ask for help. Because, we all like to feel like we know something. We all like to feel like we're the expert in something. So don't be shy about asking for advice, especially if you're in a new environment, like we talked about, having local people that you can ask for advice on the local social structure, ask for referrals, it's just a way to connect with people as much as it is to get the information that you need. And I don't know, does anybody else have any other tactics, like ways? I mean, Tina, we talked about maybe doing a breakout, but I think because of the time, it's probably not a good idea. So does anybody have any other kind of how to make friends that they want to share? Anything that's worked for you?
I mean, in my case, I've mentioned it in the beginning. So what I did here in Buenos Aires is I organized my own events via Meetup, and then leading to a WhatsApp group where the ladies that met in person were able to hang out in person as well. And I've met incredible women. The thing I want to be honest with is that I should hold myself a little bit more accountable, like the point of following up. That's definitely something I should work on because I have friends that are catching up, that are asking like, hey, can we hang out again? When do you have time? And then I respond almost immediately. But there are always, almost always that way around, the ones who are catching up with me. So I have to hold myself a little bit more accountable. Maybe the one or the other does find herself in that as well to really set maybe, I don't know, I'm working quite logically, because that's how my German brain works, to put like two dates per week where I catch up with friends to hold myself accountable and to be like, I need a reminder to really catch, because sometimes I read a WhatsApp message and then it just slides all the way down and then I forget about it. And obviously it just goes well until this friend is not going to catch up with me anymore. Then I will wonder, what did I do wrong? Yes, I did not ask, hey, when do you have time? Can we hang out again? Because it's just very one-sided. And obviously that might just be one reason why friendship might just, slow down again. So that's something out of my own experience. Just wanted to share with you guys.
Well, and that was actually a good segue because, well, two things. One, I want you to write down which of these you're willing to experiment with over the next 4 to 8 weeks. Think about, the different categories and like what is an area that you think if you focused on it, it could really help you with making friends or deepening the relationships you already have. So capture that, because as you go through the rest of the exercises, this can be part of your plan. And also, I'm very willing, anybody that's either here at the workshop or watching the recording, email me what those one or two things are. And for the month after, sometime November, December, for the month after that, so I guess email me by the end of November, I'm happy to be your accountability partner, and I will check in with you and help you stay on track with the things that you are committed to experimenting with. Because I think a lot of times when we actually commit to doing something and then we have somebody checking in on us, we're more likely to do it. And I encourage you to pick one or two of the things and then see how they go, and either add others in the future as you kind of master the ones you tried, or if you decide that they're not working for you, just try some other ones. Because, those are the how, but the where is what we're going to talk about next, which I'm calling opportunities, because there's a lot of different ways to meet people, but we got to like be real specific about it to make sure that it actually happens. And so by proximity, I mean, who are the people? This is kind of like the fastest and easiest way to come in contact with people. Where are you already going? What are you already doing? And who are you already seeing in these places? Now, maybe some of the places you're going regularly, you've got kind of casual friends or close friends, but you also might have a lot of acquaintances. So think about that for yourself. You can actually jot it down on your worksheet if anything's popping into your mind right now, or you can work on it again later. But, it's like, who are you running into? Where are you spending time? And you could also add friends of friends to this. Like every time I've moved, a big thing that I've done is I've asked people, who do you know in Tokyo or wherever I'm going? And sometimes I'm saying, who do you know? And sometimes I'm saying, who do you know that knows something about managing food allergies or something specific that I had to figure out in that place? And and you can do it before you go, you can do it after you get there, but really depending on our network is such an easy part of meeting people, especially when we've relocated. And then by intention, I mean, this kind of gets to the cultivate your interests. Like what activities could you add to your life, or are you already doing where you have a built-in way of seeing people regularly? Because if you're going every week to something, that helps you build your hours. Like that would give you the opportunity to take somebody who's currently an acquaintance up to a casual friend. You start asking them open-ended questions. I kind of look at that as sort of like, oh, they're dropping clues about things in their life. You ask an open-ended question about what else they like to do other than play pickleball, which is so popular in the US, at least right now. And they might mention that they also like to try new restaurants. And that could be an opening for you to invite them to do something outside of pickleball. And then nurture is a little bit longer. So that's not something I would use with an acquaintance, but like the nurture category is, what are the things that you enjoy doing that you're committing to doing longer term? And some of them are things that you want to do on your own, but others may be things that you are doing intentionally to spend time with someone. For example, I have a friend here who I was curious about playing pickleball, but she said she was, and I really wanted to spend more time with her. So we signed up for pickleball lessons together. So that's just an example of like, it's more of a long-term commitment. So I'm not asking you to necessarily name that now, but like on the worksheet, why don't you write down places that it's likely for you to meet people through proximity or intention. And you can go back and fill this in again later. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of looking at this talk as planting seeds. And the way my brain works is a lot of times something when I'm like washing the dishes or whatever else, like something will pop into my head later. So it's good, like keep the worksheet handy. You can always go back in and fill in other things. And then gold is what we're going to talk about on the next slide. That's really your faraway friends that I think is it's sort of like make new friends. One's silver and one is gold, but keep the old. One is silver, one is gold. It's like your old friends are gold if they're really healthy friendships. But I think you need to make sure you don't spend so much time nurturing your faraway friends that you use that as a substitute for friends that are close. So that was a lot. Does anybody have any questions, ideas, like extra things that they want to add that they've observed in their own lives around sort of the tactics or the opportunities to meet new people? I think you're right, because it's something that they value and they're willing to invest time and energy into it. But I think you brought up a really good point when you said, I'm not really sure what the levels of friends are, because some people have a lot of casual friends, but then something goes wrong and they don't have anyone that's that deeper level already. That's why I think it's really good that you're kind of stepping back and like with your awareness, looking at it like, oh, well, maybe they don't have a lot of close friends. So it depends on what you want. Some people are happy having, just a handful of really close friends and they don't really care about the acquaintances and the casual friends. Yeah, it's definitely very personalized, which is in the exercises that you'll do at home. There's like much more focus on like, what is it that you want for yourself? And so this is like very tactical about friends. Like, I think, like I said, these earlier about the benefit of friendship is it can boost your self-esteem. Like if you're feeling down, like you can't make friends, being in touch with your faraway friends can really help you, because you're like, wait a minute, I have made good friends before and I do have good friends. So I think that's really, from a life coaching strategy, like remembering things that we've been successful doing in the past when we're trying to do them again is really important. I mean, I think a lot of it is like, what is your style versus their style? And like really the one thing that I've come to embrace in my older years with friends is like, I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. And, some people just aren't fast responders or whatever it may be. Maybe it's a cultural difference. I don't know. I think some of it is, how do I feel when I'm with that person? And like, what are my boundaries? So the one tactic that's always probably the best one, but it's a little bit, you have to be brave, is like being vulnerable and saying like, hey, you know what? I really enjoy our time together. I'd love to do XYZ with you. What do you think? And or I'd like to, some people even say like, I'd love to take our friendship to the next level and start doing this or that with you. Like, what do you think? And you have to find your own words, but that's the most direct way to find out how they feel. But you have to word it in a way that it's not too awkward, I guess, so that they're comfortable being open with you. I would still love to have coffee with you. So why don't you reach out to me? So I keep it positive and leave it open. But I think part of it too is getting really, making friends from the inside out is like getting really comfortable with yourself and then like figuring out what your boundaries are and what you're willing to accept from other people and like when it's time to move on. The other thing that I'll say though is that sometimes when we are in a situation where we're the ones that are trying to create a friendship circle from the ground up, we put a lot more emphasis on a friendship than the other person is, because we just like, they already have 10 friends and we only have 2. So those 2 are so front and center with us. So definitely be like really honest with yourself about what you think could be going on. But yeah, you have to kind of figure out what you're most comfortable with. But that was a really good question. It's a hard one. You kind of stumped me to some extent. Okay, so to the faraway friends, and I'm going to get quickly because there's an exercise that you're going to do, and there's more information in that worksheet. So there's 2 exercises. One is about like where assessing your current local friend group, and the other one is about identifying and putting together a plan for keeping in touch with your faraway friends. So the tips are, start small. Like right now, I think it would be great. Like think about off the top of your head, who are 3 to 5 of your faraway friends that you think you want to make sure you stay close to. And then when you do the exercise, you'll actually think through the definitions of friendship and the 5 C's and kind of think about the 1 to 3 that are the most healthiest that you might want to actually invest time in keeping in touch with. So start small, stay flexible. I mean, a lot of people are, not good at keeping in touch long distance. And so your relationship will change. And so you need to be flexible around that. Like maybe somebody that you used to have coffee with every week doesn't want to do a video call with you every week or, whatever it may be. So stay flexible because your life is all brand new and at a different stage, and their lives are maybe the same, but they're going on without you. So you kind of have to be respectful of the fact that things are changing for them, even though they're in the same place. I think always in any relationship, listening with curiosity, listening to understand, and then asking open-ended questions is so important. I've been guilty of moving and being so excited about my new environment and talking to friends at home and just going on and on and on about me, and not really taking time to ask about them. So that's really important. And, also pay attention, like read their cues. Like if you find yourself dumping on them and you need to reel it back in, like maybe send them a text afterwards saying like, oh, I'm sorry. I feel like I talked so much about myself, but I also I meant to ask you about XYZ about you, and just to kind of make yourself feel better and make them feel appreciated after the fact. If possible, with your closest faraway friends, try to see them. If they live in a place that you go back to visit anyway, that's obviously the easy thing. But it's also fun to have them come, if they're a really close friend, have them come and visit you to see your new life. That's not always possible. It depends on the situation. Sometimes, like I was in a situation where I had extra flight points, and I said to my friend, I really want you to come and visit. Like, I'm going to give you a frequent flyer ticket and you can stay with me. And so it's not going to cost you that much. But it was like so important to me that we saw each other and spent time together. So there's ways to help each other, like to work together, or maybe you meet in a neutral location if that's easier for both of you. And then, what, I'm a big planner. So I say, if you're going to keep in touch with these like 1 to 3 people to start, then put a plan in place. Like maybe you put a reminder on your calendar to send a text every 2 weeks, or maybe you're going to like actually, I don't know, my brain is going blank again. But anyway, put it on your calendar. Like being spontaneous is good also, but some people aren't spontaneous on a regular basis. So there actually needs to be some planning, at least in the beginning, until you get into a rhythm. And hopefully it will be mutual and the person will reach out to you as well. And then, you know what, like with this exercise that I'm sending you, go ahead and do this for a while with certain friends and then assess how it feels. Like in the exercise, I think I asked you to rate how close you feel to that person now, and then go through this keep in touch plan and then assess it at the end and see if it seems to be working, and then tweak it if it's not. Some of the tactics that I want to throw out, and now I'm like officially talking fast because I know we're running out of time, is make it mutual. I think it's great to say to the person, like, I know we don't live in the same place anymore, but I really want to stay friends with you. So like, what would work for you? Like, what's the method of keeping in touch and how often do you want to do it? And you don't have to necessarily stick with that, but at least you've let the person know that you care about them and it's really important to you. With milestones, get their birthday on your calendar. If there's any other major milestone in their life, like get it on your calendar and remember to ask about it or celebrate it. I'm going to bring up follow up again. If you're talking to the person or they mention that they have a job interview or that they have an ill family member, like make sure you ask them about it after the fact. Put it on your calendar. Surprise is always fun. If you're going through your day and you see something at a grocery store that reminds you of something about the friend, take a picture of it and send it to the person. Or just send them a quick text and say, hey, I saw this and I thought of you. Like I get those from friends sometimes and it always makes my day. Or include them, maybe you do a little video tour of where you're living now so that they can see your environment. And then the last one is mix it up. Like if you're always texting with the friend, a way to kind of feel closer is to maybe send a voice message or, FaceTime them or just do something that's a little different than what you normally do. Anybody have any other ideas for managing faraway friends? Has anybody tried to do this and had like good results or challenging results?
I mean, in my case, I'm managing to stay in contact with my friends in Germany by just having regular checkups. or check-ins. Like we set a date. For example, one friend, we just started a new routine where we would jump into video call once a month. So we set a date. And in her case, like her life just got super busy because she got a kid, her life circumstances changed. But if we're not able to make it work that day, we make sure that we figure out a new date immediately. So we hold ourselves accountable. And I mean, speaking out of experiences with my friends abroad in Germany, those are friends. It's just, I have a handful of close friends in Germany that I know since years already. And, it's that type of relationship where sometimes it's okay to not stay in contact like 24/7. But we know like if something comes up, we will support each other and we will be there. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I spontaneously flew to Germany to attend a small wedding of one of my closest friends. It's just, I guess everyone has a different approach and it really depends on what works best for you. But sometimes we have to hold ourselves a little bit accountable. And that goes along with a question Irene or Irina has. She's asking if anyone can recommend an app to hold yourself accountable, to catch up with new friends maybe, or to catch up with old friends. So I don't know an app. So what I will do after this call today, so that's one of my learnings, is that I will use my Google Calendar where I get notifications on my phone as well to set a date and to take those 15 minutes and to catch up with friends back home, but also here in Buenos Aires. That's my
exactly
learning.
all tasks on my calendar, or like I'll put their birthday as a birthday so that it gets filtered onto my calendar for every year. But I think you brought up a good point, and I probably brushed over that a bit. Is like it's definitely important like, to figure out what works for you, and like every friendship doesn't need to be in regular contact. Like maybe it's like, hey, I'm still feeling close to you as long as I see you when you come back to visit your parents twice a year, or whatever it may be. So it is really finding the rhythm that works for you. But I think it's like finding the rhythm and then making sure it happens, because I know I've got many friends who are very like out of mind, out of sight. And whenever I reach out to them, they're really happy to hear from me. But if I didn't reach out to them, the friendship would fizzle. So it's like, I've had to accept that I'm going to always be the one that reaches out. And, every friendship is one thing that's nice about new friends, especially if we're people who have evolved in some way, is that they don't know our history. So there's kind of pros and cons to both. Like for people that when they don't know the history, like if you're maybe a little bit nicer to yourself and others than you used to be in your youth, like then they are starting fresh with you and they know that you as you currently are. And there's something really nice about that. And then last but not least at all, because this is really my kind of golden nugget of making friends, is really getting to know yourself and being a good friend to yourself, because it's really hard to find people that you like when you don't even like yourself. So I really look at this like as a lot of people would say to me, like, oh, you're so lucky you've moved around. You've had so many chances to reinvent yourself. And I was like, yeah, look at me. I'm reinventing myself. But the reality is, at one point, I was like, I'm fine. I actually need to shed the layers that I've collected over time from society and my family and everyone else and get back to who I really am and what I like doing. And so I've started looking at it as more of going inside and shedding the things that no longer serve me. So, you can ask yourself, how happy are you with your life? What's working well? What's not working well? What's most important to you? And, the coachy word for that is values. On your worksheet, you can write down like what is most important to you in your life. Like if anything comes to mind. I have some resources for you, of course, in the resource guide to take that to a deeper level. But, values provide you with direction and purpose. They also, help with making decisions. I often will say no to something just because my calendar's already full. And while it sounds like it's fun, I'm not going to give up anything that's already on my calendar, because those are things that are really associated with what I value in my life. And, they'll sometimes say like, "Well, women think they can do it all and they can't." And I'll say, no, women can do it all. They just need to realize they can't necessarily do it all at the same time sometimes. So I think knowing what you value and having that be reflected in how you spend your time and energy is a really valuable piece of information in terms of like making decisions, making friends, creating a life that you love that's not tied to a certain location or a certain job. But anyway, values, I see this is where I go off on my tangents, but they give you a stronger sense of self and they help you in relationships with managing boundaries. They make your connections healthier because you're meeting people that have aligned values. You know, for example, if you drink alcohol and you meet people that don't drink alcohol, like probably the way you socialize is going to be different. So that might not be a good fit in some cases, not always. And then, you know, if you know what your values are, it helps you find people with similar values. And, you know, because we're short on time, I think what I'm going to just say here is like, think about what is most important to you. Like, think about like 3 to 5 things. Jot it down if anything's popping into your mind. If not, you can do this later. You know, one thing I'll say about values is that often we are saying values that we think we should say. Like, family's my most important value. So we call those aspirational values. Then there's the realistic values that are the ones that you're actually reflecting in how you spend your time, how you talk, the things that you do, you know, all of that. So that's something to keep in mind. So like what I would ask you to do if you've jotted down some words is to like really then take a look at your calendar and write down what somebody that doesn't know you would say you value based on how you spend your time. And then compare the two lists and figure out where the gaps are, because that's where the disconnect is in your life and maybe causing some discomfort. I mean, if you looked at my calendar, you would say, oh, she spends a lot of time driving. She must value spending time in her car or getting from here to there or whatever you would think. But the reality is a lot of the driving is with my teenage daughter and I value time with her. And so there are ways for me to get her from here to there, but I don't push on them because I value that time in the car with her. So that's just an example of living your values. And that in the resource guide, I have a Brene Brown exercise for identifying your values. And she gives like a long sheet of what typical values are. And I also have a book called Let Them by Mel Robbins. Has anyone read that? Yeah, I see some.
I have not read it, but it's on my list.
Yeah, you know, there's so much good information. She talks a lot about mastering adult relationships, but it also can help you manage your own stress, help you not care about what others think about you as much. Like, I think it's a really good resource for doing this type of work. You know, it's like, what do I say is important to me? And how am I living my life? And like trying to figure out how to close that gap. So powerful, you know, because then that really comes into play with the type of people that you're hanging out with. Like they say we are the sum of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So think about that. Are the 5 people you spend the most time with reflecting how you want to live your life, what you value? Because if the answer is no, then you might need to reassess. Go back and look at the definition of friendship, look at the 5 C's and kind of assess the kind of people that are in your life. You know, I mean, that was super fast because we're running out of time, but it also is like what I spend like months working on with clients. So I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of a taste, because once you know your values, it helps you live much more authentically. And then that'll bring much more like meaning and stability and joy into your life. So it's really worth investing some time to look into this. Yeah, I think those are the highlights of. So definitely watch for the follow-up worksheet that Tina's going to send you. And please do the exercises, because through that, you'll then have some action items that you can implement in your own life based off of your circumstances to begin to build or strengthen your friendship circle. And I meant what I said about emailing me. It's in the follow-up email you're going to get with my email address. Email me the tactics that you're going to experiment with. Like, I love this sort of thing. Like, I'd be happy to send you some encouragement along the next month and just hear how it's going for you. Tina, I'll turn it over to you.
So, as I've mentioned, I took a few notes myself, as I have to hold myself a little bit more accountable as well to reach out to the friends I'm making at the moment. So I'm at a stage in Buenos Aires after 1 year where I'm like, okay, I have specific people I'm like, I want to discover where this is leading. similar to a relationship. And I think it's very interesting because there are a lot of parallels as well to a romantic relationship. So yeah, I'm going to send you the follow-up sheet Linda was mentioning. And there are also a few sources I have in mind because I've prepared over the past few years a lot of guidelines, stuff like that, with a lot of sources. So I would like to combine it and also send you the link to this recording. Give me some time, so I will send you the worksheet and some resources today. The link for this recording you will get most likely on Sunday or on Monday, as I still have to edit the recording itself. If you guys have any questions, I'd say we have 5 more minutes. So if there's anything on your mind, feel free to share it just now. Otherwise, thank you so much, Linda, for your time today and for spending it with us. I really appreciate you, and I can't state it often enough how much I value your time and your energy and everything you're doing for your community, what you're doing on site in Chicago, and also for the online community, especially for women going through similar situations of moving abroad, trying to connect, making friends. We're all in different stages, but I find it very interesting that nevertheless, we have so much in common. And I don't know, this just warms my heart. And I'm so happy that you were able to join. And thanks again, Linda, for taking over today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. And I also want to encourage everyone to, in the information you've received, we have our social media links. So please do follow us. We can follow you back and stay connected that way, and join whatever group is appropriate for you, because we'd love to keep in touch. And if there's anyone that you've seen on this workshop who you want to follow up with afterwards, feel free to DM them and exchange information. I don't know. Does anybody have any questions, comments? Probably need to get back to work. I guess my closing words would be authentic, be brave, be curious, and you'll have fun. Just have fun with this. I mean, making friends really should be fun. So enjoy the journey.